In tonight's headlines, Chief Executive John Lee says Hong Kong possesses its own edge to ride on the eastward shift of global economic gravity. Preliminary results show that the 9 monkeys that died at the Zoological and Botanical Gardens have succumbed to an infectious disease that can affect both animals and humans. And a self-proclaimed Taoist priest is jailed for life for murdering an intellectually impaired woman under the disguise of exorcism rituals in a village in Sai Kung 5 years ago.
Chief Executive John Lee said today that despite a sluggish economy, Hong Kong possesses distinct growth advantages that enable it to pursue recovery with vigor. Speaking at a night cable news program, Let's Talk, the city leader emphasized that the eastward shift of global economic gravity, coupled with a strong connection to the mainland market, affords Hong Kong the opportunity to cultivate a new growth sector, particularly through the establishment of a commodity trading ecosystem. Hong Kong is located at the heart of Asia and is in close proximity to the mainland, which hosts 20 to 30% of global commodity trading companies. Meanwhile, Hong Kong is safe and stable, and that is our security advantage, Lee said, predicting that the city's commodity trading sector will triple to 3% of the global market if conditions remain favorable. Regarding domestic growth opportunities, Lee remarked that the property market is stabilizing and showing signs of recovery. The city chief further elaborated that the move to raise the loan-to-value ratio to 70% for all properties, announced in his policy address, aims to foster property transactions under normal market circumstances and give the property market greater freedom for growth. He also pointed out that by adjusting the ratio of public rental housing and subsidized public housing from 7:3 to 6:4, more individuals will have the chance to buy their own homes, thereby enhancing Hong Kongers' sense of belonging to the city. Quentin Yap, Cable News.
Preliminary tests revealed that melioidosis, an infectious disease that could affect humans and animals, was the culprit that took away the lives of 9 monkeys at the Zoological and Botanical Gardens earlier this week. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung said, through necropsy and laboratory tests, the monkey's cause of death was melioidosis.
And after discussion among relevant departments, it is confirmed that the monkey's death is due to infection of melioidosis. We are saddened by the passing of the 9 monkeys. Under normal circumstances, melioidosis infection is through contact with contaminated soil and surface waters, but not person to person or animal to person.
Typically, infections are caused by polluted soil and muddy water. As the gardens once carried out soil digging work next to the monkeys' cages, the cause of death might relate to the work, Yeung added. Yeung said the Leisure and Culture Services Department has already taken action after monkeys' death, closing the mammals section of the zoo and disinfecting the cages. Among the deceased were 3 critically endangered cotton-top tamarins, 1 the Brazos monkey, 1 common squirrel monkey, and 4 white-faced sakis. We will continue monitoring the mammals in the gardens and remind staff to pay attention to their own condition and to report immediately, Yeung stated. The city has recorded 18 cases of melioidosis infection so far this year, more than the 17 cases recorded last year. Evelyn Bai, Cable News.
A self-proclaimed Taoist priest and his accomplice were sentenced to life in prison and 10 years behind bars, respectively, after being convicted of the murder and assault of a 21-year-old intellectually impaired woman, following a verdict delivered by the High Court on Tuesday. The court heard that 54-year-old Dunsany Zheng, a Chinese medicine practitioner, under the disguise of exorcism rituals, subjected Ng Yan-yu, the victim, to brutal beatings with household items and indecently assaulted her with a dildo as part of a virginity-breaking ritual. The rituals were purportedly to cleanse her of spiritual malevolence due to her supposedly interactions with entities in the spirit world. The series of severe abuse had led to Ng's untimely death in 2019. Judge Esther Tao said that Zheng's act of inserting a dildo into the victim's lower body was extremely cruel and inhumane. It was one of the worst indecent assault cases she had ever seen in her many years as a judge, and hence gave him the maximum penalty of 10 years imprisonment for the charge on indecent assault, while the murder charge carries a life sentence. Tao also pointed out that the behavior of the female defendant, 57-year-old Ma Yukang, the victim's mother, was more serious than that of Zheng's, allowing the victim to be abused and even involving in evil deeds. Her criminal liability is the same as that of the male defendant, and hence a maximum penalty of 10 years was imposed. Best Learn Cable News.
Secretary for Health Lo Chunmao said private hospitals can set their prices as high as they wish, provided they do so transparently. In response to a lawmaker's query about limiting private hospitals' charges, Lo emphasized that the focus should be on transparency rather than restrictions.
We don't want hospitals to be like an omakase restaurant. Omakase sets usually have a set price, and chef decides what you are going to eat. In a hospital, doctors decide what checks you have to go through, but in the end, it may not be a fixed price.
Lo clarified that, while he prefers not to view medical services as products, in Hong Kong's free market, the government will not cap charges, but will ensure transparency, allowing patients to know the costs of checks and surgeries. Some lawmakers proposed that the government could offer tax incentives for private hospital doctors to work in public hospitals to boost manpower. Lo said they would take into consideration whatever measures deemed necessary to enhance public health care services. When asked how the hospital authority would ensure patient safety through healthcare system reforms mentioned in the policy address regarding recent medical incidents in public hospitals, the health chief indicated that the HA is reviewing assessment mechanisms and developing risk management guidelines for operations. He also defended that the city's overall medical incident rates are lower than those in the United Kingdom and the United States. Separately, Lo announced that a task force has been formed to study the establishment of the third medical school in the city, with the first meeting scheduled for this month. Proposal collection will begin in the first half of next year, aiming for a concrete plan by year-end. Quentin Yang, Cable News.
3 people were dead and 2 were injured after a 15-year-old teenager allegedly stole his grandfather's car, speeding and crashing into a roadside store in Taipei Donghu Market on Thursday night. Footage showed that a black car that the boy drove suddenly lost control, scraping against oncoming cars before veering onto the sidewalk and smashing into an eatery. A motorcycle rider was struck and confirmed dead at the scene, while 2 customers, a man and a woman, were also pronounced fatalities. The shop owner and an employee were injured by hot oil during the incident. Local police said they found electric cigarette cartridges in the car, but they initially ruled out drug or alcohol involvement. Taiwan Shilin District Court ruled that the teenager should be taken into custody and transferred to Taipei Juvenile Detention House as soon as possible. His family may also be held responsible for negligent supervision of the vehicle.
The Israeli military on Thursday announced the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar by its forces in southern Gaza the previous day. The Israel Defense Forces stated that Sinwar was among the 3 terrorists killed. Drone footage released by the IDF showed who they claimed to be Sinwar, sitting in a chair, face covered with a cloth, and throwing a stick at the drone. The military said his identity had been confirmed through DNA test and dental records comparison. While there was no comment from Hamas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu quickly took credit, but noted that it did not signify the end of the war in Gaza.
While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages.
Nearly 250 people were taken captive from Israel during the Hamas's October 7th attacks. About half have been released, while some 70 are believed still be held in Gaza. Israel accused Sinwar of being the mastermind behind the attack that triggered the ongoing war that has killed more than 42,400 Palestinians, mostly civilians. Israel's main ally, the U.S., denied involvement in the operation, but President Joe Biden expressed hope for a ceasefire. However, Iran, key supporter for Hamas, indicated an escalation of hostilities, stating in a social media post that Sinwar's death would strengthen the spirit of resistance. In a separate development, Lebanon-based Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah announced a new and escalating phase in its conflict with Israel on Thursday. Hezbollah's statement on Telegram did not mention Sinwar's death. This followed an Israeli military operation that killed 27 people during the ground offensive in southern Lebanon on Wednesday. Quentin Yap, Cable News.
China's economy grew at a rate in line with expectations in the third quarter, but the growth rate moved further away from the country's annual growth target of 5%. The GDP grew by 4.6% over a year ago during the July to September period, meeting forecasts, but down from the 4.7% growth seen in the previous quarter.
经济回升向好的基础还不牢固。
Deputy Head of the National Bureau of Statistics, Shanlai Yun, said the foundation for the economic recovery and growth still needs to be strengthened by intensifying the synergy of existing and incremental policies, advancing the implementation of policies, as well as consolidating and enhancing the momentum for recovery and growth in order to achieve the annual targets of economic and social development. Separately, retail sales rose in September by 3.2% compared to a year ago, marking a pace faster than the 2.1% growth seen in August. Industrial output, meanwhile, grew by 5.4% last month year-on-year, compared to the 4.5% rise in August. Overall fixed asset investment grew by 3.4% in the first 9 months of the year, unchanged from the 8-month growth rate. Property investment dropped 10.1% year-over-year in the first 9 months of the year after a 10.2% decline in the first 8 months. Elsewhere, overall urban unemployment rate stood at 5.1% in September, compared with a 5.3% in August. Best Learn Cable News.